And thank you, Rima, Willis College, and KPMG for inviting me to speak on cybersecurity skills, trends, and building careers. Our company focuses, I would say the core of what we do is competencies. So we've been spending a lot of time, I would say, in the last few years, developing competencies in cyber for a lot of the financial institutions and telecommunication organizations. And just at the start of the pandemic, we started to do a podcast series with men and women leaders in cyber because they were hit hard, and we were curious to know what they were facing in terms of challenges and some of the critical competencies that they felt were really important. And I've heard a lot today about competencies from Dr. Tang and Sherry and Jessica and the panelists as well. And I wanted to share what they had to say about soft skills to succeed in their field, as well as other studies that were conducted in that area. And I'm also going to talk about the importance of clearly defining competencies for successful performance in cyber roles. What I found interesting in my discussion with women cyber leaders is that they felt that soft skills were very important. And without these, and I heard that today in the discussion, it can really put your career mobility at risk. Not that we know technical skills are really important. And as you know, there's a shortage of technical skills in cyber, but without soft skills, you can really stall or miserably fail in your career. And I guess that applies not just to cyber, but other industries as well. Next slide, please. According to a McKinsey report, 40% of employers said that a lack of soft skill is the main reason they have difficulty filling entry-level vacancies. The issue is also prevalent in cybersecurity. As cyber threats, as you know, continue to grow in sophistication, organizations face a persistent challenge, really, in recruiting skilled cybersecurity professionals. Next slide. The CISO leaders I spoke to identified a whole series of skills, but the top 5 that came out in terms of soft skills were those: analytical, critical thinking, which supports problem solving, communication, both orally and in writing, teamwork, and continuous learning. Next slide. But really the top 3, that came through not just in my discussion with all of the leaders, but also with respect to other studies that have been done in this area. So communication, teamwork, problem solving. Next slide, please. These 3 competencies were also identified in a 2019 survey of IT decision makers, which was conducted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They found that 70% considered communication to be a scarce skill. It wasn't often existing among cybersecurity graduates. And more than half struggled to find candidates strong in collaboration and team leadership. Failure to develop these skills really has a serious impact on the effectiveness of graduates once they enter the workplace. Next slide. Organizations that we've talked to and that we've worked with noted that soft skills like the one mentioned are critical for new hires. One survey by a security company, I think you're probably very familiar with them, Tripwire, found that 100% of respondents considered soft skills to be important when hiring a security team, and 21% even went so far to say that they were more important than hard skills. Next slide. So let's talk about teamwork. And this was mentioned in a lot of the discussions we've had today. The ability to work well with a team of individuals is as important as being technically savvy. Interpersonal soft skills really are hard skills to master. Help create, I think, a very cohesive team and environment for effectively applying cybersecurity, effectively applying cybersecurity technology and practices. The ability to work as a team, to me, is as essential, because without that, how can you manage in a team? Because cybersecurity is really, rarely handled by single individuals. When we talk about problem solving, we also need to talk about analytical and critical thinking, as it forms the very foundation, as you know, of effective cybersecurity work. And many graduates and entry-level employees face significant obstacles troubleshooting real-world systems. The ability to apply critical thinking to analyze cybersecurity situation and be able to communicate this to others is really critical. Finally, communication and writing skills are essential for translating technical insights into value for a company. Whether by communicating threats and trends to business management, or by writing and implementing user-friendly cybersecurity policies to protect an organization's information system. How many times have I had to deal with IT professional and could not understand what they were trying to tell me when I asked them a question? So the ability to be able to speak in layperson's terms so the person at the receiving end can understand that is so important. We know some of the barriers women face in breaking into cybersecurity include a really male-dominated culture that's often been not as welcoming as it should be to women. The lack of mentoring and development in the field, and job qualification, which can keep, as many of you said, women from applying for a position that would allow them, to grow beyond their skill set. But, having soft skills can really help women, because one must be able to communicate, problem solve, and work in team. No matter how technical somebody is, if you can't communicate in a team atmosphere, you won't be successful in the long term. And what I found as well is that interviewers are often willing to overlook a weakness in the technical skills and experience they thought they wanted when they really connected with the candidate. Another reason why the mastery of soft skills is so important for women, I think, in the industry. When you consider, the common barriers for women in cybersecurity, such as job qualifications and lack of development, soft skills can really help women navigate those challenges. Women can emphasize their problem solving, their collaboration abilities to impress hiring managers, and use communication skills to campaign for mentorship and development in the sector. Because many people in information security lack communication and other soft skills, this gives professionals, especially women, with these competencies, unique opportunities. For women, looking to acquire the technical skills needed in this field through an educational program, it's important that they find a program that includes soft skills. The key to success to me today in evaluating an educational program is how much soft skill training they are offering. So look for that when you look to choose a training program. And, you know, when I think of some of the traits required for women in this field as well, this field is really for any woman who is intellectually curious and willing to think outside of the box, unconventional thinking, and are prepared to engage in a lifetime of learning. I've heard that through the CISO leaders we interviewed. This is so important. You need to keep up with change. Agility is critical. One of my first podcast guests that I had on our cyber skills series for our Skills of the Future podcast was Rima Aristocrat. When I asked her, what are the main challenges being faced by the industry right now with respect to cybersecurity skills development, she said to me, there are not enough women currently active in cybersecurity field or in the classroom. The logic really is a simple one, right? When you think of it, more women students in class results in more women graduates, which leads to more women in the field, and the end result is more professionals to fill the vacancies. And she was telling me that the military learned decades ago to include and encourage women to join. Academia and industry have to put the measures in place to do the same with different things such as financial incentives, marketing campaign, awareness training, retooling the learning environment to be more attractive to women and adapting curriculum and instructional design to be more gender inclusive. Rima, you're right. You're always right when it comes to women in cyber. And I so agree with you. But I would add another element that I find is critical for women and men as well. But which is a great segue to my last point, is the importance of for organization to clearly spell out the competencies required for successful performance in cyber. Next slide. And here are some benefits. Why is that important today? And as an aside, in my conversation with a lot of the cyber leaders, a lot of their organization will identify, you know, a job description, what's required, and they'll identify the certifications required for a given job. But they often don't take the time to clearly define the competencies required. And really, competencies are all about how people should behave to achieve expected results. Having competencies, to me, defines the requirement for successful performance in a given job. What's to be expected? You've created a common language that everybody can now understand when you articulate the competencies required for success. It helps an organization to engage and retain their people. And lastly, what I found, it really facilitates objective decision making. Recruitment, hiring, placement, promotion decisions are made much more objective when you use competencies to define job requirement. Employees are hired, assessed, developed, and promoted based on objective criteria rather than subjective preference or unrelated factors such as seniority. And it has been proven to work in terms of removing biases from a selection process. It also helps when you're using competencies in a selection process by removing those biases, to also help in terms of increasing diversity in the workforce. Next slide. So really what a competency is the knowledge, skills, ability, and other characteristics that are defined in observable behaviors that is needed. So how will I know it when I see it? So that's important when you're looking at developing people in a given job. They need to understand what is expected of them. You need to be able to see it when they're performing, so you can provide the feedback required for them to improve and engage more in their role. So should also always answer that question. How do I know it when I see it? Next competency slide, I mean. Here's an example. I just wanted to show you a quick example of what a competency looks like. And continuous learning is a critical competency in cyber as well. And as you can see, it defines various behavioral statements that are required for different levels. So maybe at a junior level, you're developing, and these would be the behaviors expected of you in your job. But continuous learning is required not just at an entry level position, it might be required in all of the roles within your organization. So you need to have behaviors that reflect that functional level. So from intermediate to advanced roles to mastery, competencies help in terms of clearly understanding what you mean, by that. Next slide. So when I look at all of the various cyber roles that exist, in the career, I think that in every cyber job family, if you could take the time to define those critical competency, technical and non-technical, you can use these to help you for staffing. You could use the competency with respect to performance management, giving feedback, identifying the training that they need to address the competency gap. And I think number one is career pathing. Career pathing is a question candidates often ask when they go for a job interview. And once you've done that, you could path all of the roles within a career that people need to follow, and look at the competencies that and the education that would be required to attain those particular roles. Next slide. So as I said, we've been doing a lot of work with financial institutions as well. And this is just an example of an analyst and a senior analyst where they might be sharing similar competencies, but the proficiency level is different. For example, problem solving. At a junior level, you might just need a proficiency level 2, but when you look at a more senior analyst, they would need a level 3. And if you look here, these would be all of the behaviors required in order to be effective in that. So I think it's important to take the time to define that, to help people understand what's expected of them. And doing so, as I said, will remove a lot of biases in your talent management process. So the need for skilled, trained security professional is only going to get vaster and more urgent So now is the time to bolster the workforce with women. Inducting more women in cybersecurity space will help bridge that gap. Women are the future of work in cyber.